Sagicor Bank unsecured loan.
The time by Sagicor Bank is
Tonight in CVM News at 7, PNP says first voter turnout numbers favor its party. None of the above, says Reverend Al Miller, and a permanent U.S. resident unlawfully deported. In sports, Netball Jamaica in $6 million deficit to go to World Youth Cup. Hello from Kingston, Jamaica. This is CVM News at 7 for Saturday, August 30, 2025. I am Carolyn Brown. Thanks so much for joining us. There was an early morning motor vehicle crash along Old Hope Road at the entrance of the Restaurants of Jamaica headquarters. Reports are a lone female driver who was returning from a party in Pepin lost control of her vehicle near the intersection at Waterfalls. Now the car struck the median, became airborne and crashed into the ROJ's entrance gate before overturning several times, bringing down a JPS utility pole. She was assisted to hospital by another motorist and was said to be unconscious but in a stable condition. In Montego Bay, St. James, a potentially catastrophic situation was avoided due to quick action from the Jamaica Fire Brigade. A team responded to calls that a vehicle was on fire at a Rubis petrol station along the Hardcook Boulevard. Now, it was discovered a BMW SUV parked near to the entrance of the convenience store had spontaneously erupted into a blaze while work was being done on the vehicle to replace a fuel pump. Fortunately, the Montego Bay Fire Station is located next door to the property, which allowed for the rapid deployment and utilizing what appeared to be a foam fire suppressant. The first responders successfully extinguished the fire. Now, up to news time, there have been no reports of injury. And still in the West, gas station operations had a tumultuous 24 hours. 4 men are now in police custody and 2 firearms were seized following a robbery at a petrol station in Stuart Castle, Trelawney. Reports indicate shortly after 8 o'clock on Friday evening, pump attendants on duty at the Thrifty gas station were approached by men wearing hoodies who brandished handguns and demanded money. An undetermined amount of cash was handed over to the men, who then fled the premises in a Toyota Axio motor car, which headed towards St. James. A similar motor car with 4 men aboard was stopped by the police in St. James, and during a search of the vehicle, 2 firearms were recovered and the men were taken into custody. While their names have not been released, they were later identified as the ones who allegedly robbed the service station in Trelawney. A 27-year-old delivery man of Montego Hills, another 27-year-old, a mason of Paradise in Norwood, a 23-year-old driver also from Norwood, and a 20-year-old of Paradise again in Norwood. Police investigations are continuing. To politics now. The leaders of both parties continue to make their presence felt on the ground as the date of the general election nears. Prime Minister and leader of the Jamaica Labour Party, Dr. Andrew Holness, led a motorcade through sections of downtown Kingston, stopping to address a crowd at Darling Street about his plans, which include housing and the continued development of vending space.
We have seen what we have started in Denham Town with our 30-odd housing being built with Victoria Farms. In our third term, we will expand this to take care of all the communities that are now in total disrepair in terms of their housing stock. We will expand the new social housing program and deal with more big yards and tenement yards. We believe that the Jamaican people should have access to proper housing. We have done some investments in the market to rehabilitate, to deal with the leaking roofs and so forth. More investment has to be done, but there must be a total reform and rebuilding of the market area, and that will be a major focus for us in the third term.
Meanwhile, in St. Catherine, the leader of People's National Party, Mark Golding, who was just beginning his motorcade, issued a rallying cry that sought to galvanize support among residents of Portmore.
Comrades, the winds of change are blowing over the land, and those winds are carrying the message of the People's National Party. I believe that the momentum that we are feeling coming into this election next week, Wednesday, is unstoppable. We must be confident but not complacent. They are going to be trying their best to knock us off our stride. There is all kinds of lies and misinformation that is flowing in social media and all over the place. But we must not be distracted by any of that. We have a mission and we have work to do. And we must ensure that we bring out the vote, because we want all 3 seats, South St. Catherine, South East St. Catherine and East Central St. Catherine in the column of the People's National Party.
And with voting disruptions stirring public concern, a press conference by the opposition brought an explosion of concerns. With differing poll results being released, the Manifesto's main character, income tax reform, takes centre stage. Here's more from Crystal Williams.
In light of recent election developments, the People's National Party updated the public on the plans they outlined in the national debates.
The most important thing to all of us is to be able to say, I'm an Banya, I'm an Anya, just proudly declaring that we are Jamaicans. Opposition spokesperson on information Raymond Price took the opportunity to comment on the reported bomb threats spreading across the island and question whether they were prompted by ulterior motives.
The reports across the island of bomb threats, which have caused a great strain on the security forces, must be contemplated as a possible ploy to disrupt the smooth voting process for police officers, soldiers, and election day workers, among others. One wonders if this is a coordinated attempt to suppress votes.
Julian Robinson, opposition spokesperson on finance, also gave a reminder of the campaign's plans for the income tax threshold and how they intend to fund them.
The country had had established a debt to GDP target of 60% by the year 2028-2029.
He went on to assure voters of the time frame of these promises.
The figure before this was 68%. However, it has now been revised down to 62%. So I heard the Prime Minister yesterday speaking about 65. He's incorrect.
Robinson says the plan has been sufficiently calculated in order to meet the financial goals outlined in their manifesto.
Based on the projected down payment in debt, we will get to the 60% target by the end of this fiscal year, which is March 31st, 2026, which is more than enough to allow us to implement the increase in the threshold. So for those persons who are concerned that we cannot find the resources to fund it, the space is there to do so.
Junior opposition spokesperson on finance, Cleveland Tomlinson, brought forward the comparison between the income tax reduction plan in the Jamaica Love Manifesto and that of the I Choose Jamaica Manifesto. He referenced the 5th schedule of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, a law that governs public finances to ensure fiscal responsibility. Thompson says this section of the act was put into law by the last PNP government in 2014.
So when we lift the income tax threshold and individuals take home more money, and they will spend that money in the economy, and government will be able to recover indirect taxes roughly to the tune of around $10 billion. When I look at the total cost of the GLP's proposal for all the manifesto items, it is estimated at over $115 billion. And that they need to explain to us how they will fund it.
Crystal Williams reporting for CVM News.
Now, chairman of the Jamaica First Movement, Reverend Al Miller, whose entity enjoyed a brief political alliance with the Jamaica Progressive Party before amicably parting ways 10 days before the scheduled general election, during a clear-the-air media briefing Saturday, and made an unusual and potentially controversial appeal to registered voters who feel uncommitted to the options available. His suggestion: use the opportunity to register that sentiment at the polls.
Those uncommitted, those in that category that you're not feeling your conscience allowing you in that way, go and express that franchise, that gift that you have, the responsibility in this democratic society. Make your objections or your feelings, your sentiments known.
Despite describing the 2025 general election as perhaps the most consequential of the past 40 years, Reverend Miller also says it provides an opportunity for members of the electorate to demonstrate the desire for a change from the status quo, where two parties dominate Jamaica's political landscape.
Our ballot is a powerful option, and this is the time we say to use it. So hence we are suggesting for you to participate in the process and take your stand, is for you to put 0 beside all of the options that you are given, because you do not feel they satisfy you, because in so doing you are declaring your dissatisfaction. And this signifies none of the above when you do that. So it's making it clear. And this is not a wasted ballot. Don't let's see it that way. It's not a wasted vote. It is to record your statement that says, I am unhappy. It is a data point of conviction that says, I was present, I engaged, and the options presented to me do not meet the minimum standards, but I'm committed to my nation. I'm committed to the purpose. So none of the above.
CVM News at 7 will continue in just a moment.
The following is a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
Fixing our healthcare system had not been a sprint, but we have stuck to the race and we have made significant strides. The healthcare issues of today are not the same issues we faced when the PNP was in power. Let's hear what the PNP spokesperson on health had to say when that party was in government about the state of public health.
This is about having infrastructure in a hospital where when it rains, you don't have to put a bucket to collect the water. It's about providing us with proper materials.
We cannot go back to that. To date, we have upgraded over 138 health centers and spent more money than any other government to upgrade and build out our hospitals. And guess what? We're not done yet. We are doing more for you. So on September 3rd, put your ex beside the bell. Choose Jamaica. Choose the Jamaica Labour Party.
The proceeding was a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
This is your reminder on how to mark your ballot. Easy and confidential. When you receive your ballot, take a moment to read it carefully. Mark your ballot clearly with an X beside the symbol of the candidate of your choice. Use only the pencil provided. Make sure it is visible. Once you're done, fold the ballot as instructed and return it to the presiding officer. Your vote is your voice. Make your mark, make it count.
This feature was brought to you by the Jamaica Labour Party.
My name is Dave Brown. I'm the Member of Parliament for Hanover Eastern. I'm a two-term Member of Parliament and seeking to get my third term. I grew up in a small community known as Haddington, that's maybe about 2.5 miles out of Oakville. And I had gone to school at Bethel, which was a 2.5-hour trek. Bethel in Oakville. I used to walk to and from every day, 2.5 hours to and 2.5 from. My mom and my dad, they're really responsible for my study in the constituency because I had really left at age 17 to join the force, or 17 plus to join the force. So I'd really move away from the community at that age. But you know, on my return, they really were the one who people knew, not really me as such, but you know, the condition was there.
Show up my large up the thing at third term, the thing there, better get it here.
In all fairness, the road conditions are just not the best, and I'm doing my best to ensure that you know things get better, especially in the bigger farming communities like the Cocoon Castle and the Smithfield, which are my two biggest farming communities. So I am presently working on the roads in those areas. I've done some work on the Smithfield farming community farm roads. I've done phase 1 and phase 2 on the Cocoon Castle farm road open. So I'm doing a third phase just to ensure that the farmers have good roads to make all their produce. All right, so thank you for coming along with me. It has been a very, very good day. I am Dave Brown, and this is a night behind the ballot.
This feature was brought to you by the Jamaica Labour Party.
Thanks so much for staying with us. The Minister of Finance, Favour Williams, says Jamaicans should not be surprised by what she calls flip-flopping of the People's National Party. The opposition People's National Party proposed to raise the personal income tax threshold to $3.5 million, adding that it can be funded through organic revenue growth and existing pockets in the budget. Now, PNP spokesman on finance Julian Robinson later informed that the increase will be funded through adjusting the country's primary surplus target. The proposal to remove personal income tax for persons earning up to $3.5 million annually is the centerpiece of the PNP's Guide to a Better Life. However, Minister Favour Williams says the PNP's promise to increase the income tax threshold to $3.5 million can now be described as a failure.
Initially, the people said they would phase in the increase, which they had strongly opposed before. When pressed on the issue of how they would fund it, the PNP then said organic growth of the Jamaican economy would fund their fake promise. The PNP then adjusted its position to say they would not phase it, but instead would start on April 1 next year, saying that growing revenue projections would pave the way for a phased increase. However, when the Prime Minister and I called them out and explained that more than 8% growth would be required and that they had not contemplated expenses, they backtracked and said they would fund the increase by reducing the primary surplus. The PNP clearly has no clue how they will fund their fake promise, which is nothing more than a desperate attempt to win votes.
According to Minister Williams, the flip-flopping from the PNP on the issue of how it will fund its election promise confirms that the country has to be careful in listening to other messages they have proposed.
The PNP cannot be taken at their word. They have also flip-flopped on the issue of the rural school bus system, which they had vowed to scrap and replace with several changes of unworkable plans. Clearly, they have no plan other than trying to fool the people of Jamaica in their desperate thirst for political power.
To other news now, a 60-year-old man with a permanent resident status in the United States of America found his name was still in the Book of Rules years past. Now, what followed next was a wilderness experience for the preacher, who also counseled others on how to stay away from trouble.
Let me look at my money, see what I have left. Just $4, $4 American. And, you know, yes, at times it seems surreal that this has happened to me. And, you know, it woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Among the possible second guessing for Kirk Montague, who lived in Florida, was only being familiar with Jamaica as a visitor 40 years ago when he was 20 years old, and thinking he was exempt from a 1997 misdemeanor which occurred before the 2001 Patriotic Act. However, a traffic stop flung the door wide open.
I was told that it was basically I had a hold, to say that I had a hold in that something occurred 28 years ago, which I never had any problem with. I've been there legally 35 years as a permanent resident. I never attained my citizenship. Basically, I didn't want to bring the situation up where, even though nothing was said about it, I didn't want to start dealing with that in any way. It was leave good enough alone. But all of a sudden, I guess the new laws, administrative laws, became more strict, and anyone who's not a citizen, you know, you go to scrutiny, you end up being placed in ICE detention. I was there for 8 months.
The next thing, the man who was preaching and teaching lost souls and properties.
We went to court, and the judge made a decision that I'm to be deported. So I thought what all I was doing would go in my favor, but apparently it seemed as if they already had their minds made up. And I see that a lot. I see where some people there are told judges tell them to get a lawyer and he'll give you a bond, and family spends thousands of dollars to get a lawyer, and they go back to court and the judge don't give them a bond and still deport them.
It was time for survival mode, separated from loved ones.
The Ministry of Security did put us up in a hotel, and then they moved us to a shelter. But other than that, I have some positive job leads. I've been communicating with the Department of Health, so they're hiring for counselors and clinical psychologists.
Almost 3 months and he's still leading while he's bleeding. Curlin Brown, CVM News. Let's go now to our regional and international news.
We begin with news in the region. Trinidad and Tobago will provide strategic space to protect its CARICOM brothers and sisters if Venezuela takes action against Guyana. This assurance came from Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Besacer, who is responding to questions from reporters on the possibility of Venezuelan aggression towards Guyana. TTT News with that report.
Should Venezuela move against Guyana, it is then that we will offer any space here to protect our CARICOM. Brother and sister.
Speaking after a meeting with Grenadian Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell, Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Besacer addressed the possibility of Venezuela moving against Guyana and tensions involving the United States. The Prime Minister also responded to questions about Trinidad and Tobago's alliances, particularly with the U.S.
We are in alliance with anyone, anywhere who will help us fight drugs, crime, guns, criminals. We are in alliance with any such countries and persons, anywhere.
She confirmed that Trinidad and Tobago has not been in any discussion with the United States for use of this country's territorial waters or soil.
Again, I repeat, we have no evidence of the allegations being made, and further, we have no discussions of the U.S. actually be deploying on Trinidad and Tobago soil. If they know otherwise, or they say there's more, share the evidence, because at the moment it's just rhetoric. It's just rhetoric that what Cuba is saying, what Venezuela is saying, give us evidence. We will consider.
Serious questions are being raised about how the People's Progressive Party Civic PPPC accessed the private data of citizens during its campaign operations. The issue came to light after General Secretary Bharat Jagdeo admitted that his party provided the numbers to its agents. HGP TV News tells us more.
The Secretary of the People's Progressive Party and the country's sitting Vice President Bharat Jagdeo is not prepared to tell the electorate how their private data have been accessed by his party agents. Several citizens have reported and have even recorded being contacted by agents of the PPPC inquiring whether they would be voting for the PPPC at Monday's elections.
We acquire those numbers from various sources. That's all I'm going to say. We acquired the number from various sources.
The seemingly flummoxed vice president really declined to say if indeed the names and the numbers had been gathered from the government of Guyana's cash grant database in 2024.
We gave her the number to call. She didn't. They're just harassing the poor young girl.
The vice president even further denied that data was provided to the government.
Data is always protected. We have a new law, and what we pass, and the data is protected.
Instead of properly addressing the issue, the vice president said he finds it abhorrent that citizens would try to harass and intimidate his party agents when they call.
And in international news, a divided U.S. appeals court ruled most of Donald Trump's tariffs illegal, but allowed them to remain in place until October 14, while his administration appeals to the Supreme Court. We hear from Reuters.
Every country will be reciprocal.
Most of Donald Trump's tariffs are illegal. A divided U.S. appeals court ruled on Friday, undercutting the U.S. president's use of them as a key policy tool.
China's an abuser.
Trump has made tariffs a pillar of U.S. foreign policy in his second term, using them to exert political pressure and renegotiate trade deals with countries that export goods to the United States.
Essentially, they don't take very much.
They have also increased volatility in financial markets. The court allowed the tariffs to remain in place through October 14 to give his administration a chance to file an appeal with the Supreme Court.